Prove the congruent supplements theorem. It's written here. Okay, and basically what we have is if two angles, angle 1 and angle 3, are both supplementary to the same angle, angle 2, then that means that angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent. Okay, the picture also says everything. I mean, if you have something like you have an angle, I don't know, you have an angle like this, right? This is angle 1, and then you have some other angle, angle 2, and then you have some third angle, angle 3, let's say. Or sorry, you have some other angle, this is angle 3, and then you have some other angle, angle 2, something like that. And if it's the case that measure of 1 plus measure of 2 is 180, and also measure of 3 plus measure of 2 is 180, that must imply that these two angles are actually the same. And we're going to prove that with statements and reasons. Okay. Okay, so basically what you say is angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. That's in the given. And you also say that angle 3 and angle 2 are supplementary. And this is what's given. Now you use the definition of supplementary now at this point. So what does it mean for two angles to be supplementary? Their measures sum to 180. That is the definition of supplementary. So I can now write two equations. I can write measure of 1 plus measure of 2 equals 180. And I could also write that measure of 3 plus measure of 2 is equal to 180. And this statement follows from the definition of supplementary. Okay, what does it mean for two angles to be supplementary? Their measures sum to 180. If two angle measures sum to 180, then they are supplementary. Okay. Now from here, these two equations, they both equal 180, which means that you could set them equal to each other. So now I have measure of 1 plus measure of 2 is equal to measure of 3 plus measure of 2. And this is substitution. I just substituted. And I'm almost there, because now you can see that if I were to subtract on both sides here, the measure of angle 2, of course measure of angle 2 minus measure of angle 2 is 0. So working with this equation right here from 3, I subtract measure of angle 2 on both sides. This cancels and then this cancels. And I get measure of angle 1 is equal to measure of angle 3. And this follows from subtraction property of equality. Subtraction. Okay, and you can just write subtraction, 5. Okay, and the last statement we must not forget, if the measure of two angles are equal, if the measure of two angles is equal, right? If the measure of two angles is equal, then that means that the two angles are congruent, or the measure of two angles are equal, then the angles are congruent. If the angles are congruent, then their measures are equal. If their measures are equal, then the angles are congruent. If the angles are congruent, then their measures are equal. Here I have that the measures of these two angles are equal. Therefore, the two angles are congruent. And this is definition of congruent angles, what I keep repeating, right? Of congruent angles. And now you're done. You've proven it, okay? Which, again, in everything that you've done, make sure you have everything orientated in your mind, because we're going to use this theorem over and over. So if you don't know what this theorem is actually saying, you're going to run into trouble in other proofs. So let's understand. If two angles are supplementary to the same angle, then the two angles are congruent. I made these two angles, I just called the two angles angle 1 and angle 3. They're both supplementary to angle 2. That implies that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. The two angles then are congruent. Okay, the picture looks something like this. Angle 3 plus measure of angle 3 plus measure of angle 2 is 180. Measure of angle 1 plus measure of angle 2 is 180, right? This angle plus this angle is 180, and this angle plus the same angle over here, angle 2, equals 180. Okay.